Hello, podcast listeners. This is your host with the most. Imagine we are around a bonfire because this episode is going to start with the legend of Old Three Legs. And then we're going to talk about selling tickets. And then we're going to talk about Doug Burgum. We've got a lot going on. And you got to stay until the very end to hear about this great new game that Tucker's made up. Enjoy this episode of JJ Meets World. And by the way, if you'd like to help support our podcast, visit jjmeetsworld.com where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some killer swag at our merch shop, or click the link to Apple Podcast and give us a 5-star review.
1, 2, 3, 4. JJ Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones, in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure. Yes, he is. He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. JJ has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled, and he's fun and then he twirled as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprained. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called JJ Meets World.
All right, am I sounding good?
You sound good.
This is the sound.
Yeah.
Tucker, I want to tell you about a legend that I just heard about recently. And I guess, is a legend, does it have to be false?
Yeah, because I guess with legend and myth,
okay,
there's a difference. I think myth is the one that's specifically false. Like, oh, that's a myth, right?
Okay.
That means it's a lie. Legend is, I think, a legend is the story itself that's been passed down through time.
Okay.
I believe, but maybe not the initial act. So it might be that it's a story that isn't itself true, but it's based off of some.
Okay.
truth.
Well, this is a 100% true story.
And you verified this. You've gone through the channels.
I became obsessed with this last week,
Okay.
and it's not only Field and Stream magazine covering it almost over 100 years ago, but it's now a part of the Becker County Museum. It has become and it's like it was. You're
sourcing a paper from 100 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, why not, right?
No, you're right. You're right. You're totally right. I'm just thinking of
I'm not sourcing a blog from 100 years ago.
No, I'm just thinking like an issue of Field and Stream from 1923. It's pretty crazy.
I mean, there's trout in this stream. Yep, there sure was. Okay, this is the legend of Old Three Legs. You're gonna love this. For nearly a decade, the canny old wolf eluded the best hunters and trappers while waging a reign of terror on farmers and wildlife. This is a wolf that was in Mahnomen, Becker, Ottertail County, so right in our own backyard. Despite his one serious handicap, he was a streamlined and highly efficient killing machine. It almost seemed as though all the savagery and single-minded determination to slaughter every chicken, turkey, pig, lamb, and cow within a 50-mile radius of Detroit Lakes, Minnesota, and the region of northern Minnesota was directed at his much-hated and equally determined two-legged adversary.
Oh, wow.
Okay, meaning man. They're referring to man.
Oh, okay. Not Sasquatch?
Narrowly escaping his pursuers by forfeiting his right front paw and part of his leg to the jaws of Cold Steel, and the bloodthirsty killer of local legend would come to be known as Old Three Legs. For nearly a decade, he invoked fear and terror in both man and beast. It was even reported that he had several threatening encounters with local children. Around campfires and home hearths alike, stories by hunters and trappers and city dwellers were told about the spirit wolf that seemingly could not be stopped by dog pack, bullet, or trap. To some, he was the devil incarnate disguised in wolf's skin. In spite of numerous sightings and close calls, he clung to life with a passion and tenacity driven by a keen intelligence and sheer will to survive. He seemed driven to live another day to continue his unprecedented killing spree. Now, here's where it gets even better. Okay. The legend of Old Three Legs originated just over a century ago in the spring of 1916 when a well-known hunter and wolf trapper of local renown, Dynamite Bill Foster of Ponsford, Minnesota, reportedly located the den of a lone female wolf. This well-known she-wolf was a marauder and livestock killer in her own right, having been creased across the spine by a bullet in her younger days and partially crippled in her back legs. She walked with a noticeably strange gait. Some described her labored stride as that of a hyena's. Now, I don't know if you remember the story of Beowulf, But this has got some real Beowulf vibes because we're talking about the mother first.
This is
then
Three Legs' mom?
This is Three Legs' mom. Old Three Legs' mom.
Okay.
Instead of shooting the wolf and collecting the lucrative $6 bounty, Dynamite Bill shrewdly watched the den from a distance, thinking she might have pups. Sure enough, his patience was rewarded when he saw several pups emerge from the den with their impeded old mother. Unexpectedly, however, he watched in horror as the adult wolf proceeded to kill all of the pups except one. It would later be determined that the lone survivor was a male. Perhaps this sage mother knew she could not provide enough milk or sustenance for an entire litter. Whatever the reason, she and her single surviving pup disappeared into the woods, and Dynamite Bill was deprived of the easy bounty he hoped to collect. Over the next year, the she-wolf and her son wreaked havoc on sheep, chickens, turkeys, and other livestock in a 5-county area around Detroit Lakes. 2 years after Dynamite Bill lost his opportunity to collect a bounty, a rural mail carrier named Ole Justund found the stiff and weathered carcass of the old female in the woods. Her throat had been savagely ripped open. Those in the know agreed that such a violent act could only have been committed by her nearly full-grown male pup. Shortly after the discovery of the mutilated she-wolf, the young male seemed to go on a killing rampage. Like his mother before him, he was never seen with other wolves and likely never took a mate. Instead, he plied his trade for much of his life as a lone wolf that killed for the sheer love of killing. The slaughter continued week after week. He seldom ate any of the farm animals he so viciously attacked. Well-trained dogs left out at night to protect the livestock were no match for his shrewdness. One evening in northern Ottertail County, the lone wolf slaughtered 16 ewes belonging to a local farmer, Elmer Cox. This was not the first time the wolf had violated Cox's barnyard, but if he had anything to do with it, it'd be the last. The enraged farmer vowed revenge. Cox loaded a horse with traps and other provisions and set out on the killer's trail, tracking the wolf across 5 counties in northern Minnesota. His quest became widely known, and he grew to be something of a local folk hero for his courage and tenacity. One night, while staying at the Lou Tenger farm, Cox learned that there was a fresh sign from the killer had been discovered nearby. He and Tenger immediately devised a plan to end the reign of the killer wolf once and for all. After carefully preparing numerous traps and making sure all the human scent had been painstakingly masked by fresh chicken blood and fish entrails, they tethered a live lamb to a tree on a high knoll in a strategic spot overlooking the barnyard where the wolf would likely stop to survey the scene below. A dozen deadly traps were skillfully hidden under the snow and leaves in a complete ring around the tree. Pleased with their work and believing that no living creature could get through such a hidden barrier of cold steel, they retired for the night. The next morning, to their utter astonishment, the lamb was dead, torn apart, but not eaten. The night's activities were clearly recorded for the two men to decipher in the displaced snow. The wolf had gone for the bait as hoped, but this was no ordinary wolf. The crafty animal had carefully tiptoed around each trap toward the lamb, avoiding the circle of death. Then, clutching the doomed lamb in his mouth, he began to retrace his steps by placing a paw precisely in the previous footsteps. One error in judgment occurred when a rope holding the lamb became taut and apparently threw his body slightly off balance. His left front paw missed the intended paw print and pierced the snow a few inches to one side directly into the jutting jaws of steel. The blood and other signs on the ground told Cox and Tegner that the enraged wolf had chewed into splinters and the heavy stake holding the trap and somehow managed to pull it out of the ground. Carefully avoiding the other traps and leaving the lamb where it lay, the wolf vacated the area with a heavy steel trap still clamped around his lower left paw, the remains of the stake dragged behind. The determined farmers wasted little time in launching a new plan. The wolf was obviously hindered by the heavy steel trap. With luck, they could catch him and finish the job, but only if they moved fast enough. They quickly rounded up several neighbors and a pack of experienced wolfhounds and set out on the trail. For the rest of the day, well into the night, and throughout most of the next day, they forged ahead, stopping for brief periods only to rest and eat. The wolf showed no sign of wearing down. And at noon on the third day, the third damn day, They decided to release the wolfhounds. Maybe, just maybe, they hoped, the dogs were close enough to the injured wolf to hold him at bay. That afternoon, they found the first of 3 bloodied and shredded hounds dead in the snow. The necks of each had been ripped out. That evening, the surviving dogs limped into camp. Around mid-morning the next day, that would be the 4th day, the men made a grisly discovery in the snow. Just ahead lay the heavy trap and the stake, and part of the wolf's left front paw still attached. Having gnawed off his own paw, the wolf was now free of his encumbrance. Tired and somewhat spooked, the men helping Elmer Cox were ready to throw in the towel and go home. Elmer stubbornly forged ahead alone. That same night, tracks in the snow clearly showed that a 3-legged wolf had killed a calf belonging to a nearby farmer named John Grammer. From that night on, the killer became known as Old Three Legs. It was brutally cold, the kind of cold that drains a man of his will to continue on. Elmer finally gave up and pointed his horse for home. In the months that followed, rewards were offered and state authorities were summoned for help. Renowned trappers came from near and far to have a go at Old Three Legs. Officials hired 2 respected and woods-wise Indian guides, John Red Blanket of Mahnomen and Jesse Mason of Red Lake. Months later, after a close encounter with Old Three Legs, in which both men emptied their carbines at the beast as it stood only a few yards away, they too gave up and went home, claiming the animal was some sort of magical spirit wolf. While the 2 guides were still on the wolf's track, Old Three Legs raided the Grover Admonson farm and killed 40 sheep and 2 cows in a single night. Jesus. According to a story written by Ken Prentons, Mrs. Admonson was a frail, sickly woman, and the neighbors always said that the shock of that loss was too much for her. At any rate, she died less than 4 months later.
His first human victim.
You're right. Yeah, because of shock, just of shock. Admonson sent his 2 small children to relatives in Minneapolis, and then he, like many others, got on the trail of Old Three Legs.
Sent the kids away for their safety.
Well, I was thinking because he probably couldn't handle them at the time, right? It's 1916. What's a single man to do with 2 kids? His face became gaunt and hollow. His eyes took on a wild, staring look. He ignored farmers' pleas to give up the chase, and eventually he went insane, tracking Old Three Legs. One day, Oscar Nesbitt, a trapper, found Admonson's body frozen to death out on the trail. Nesbitt said that around the body were tracks of a 3-legged destroyer who must have come back to sneer at the poor mortal who had tried so long to destroy him. So he went to check. Didn't eat the man, didn't tear his throat out, just saying, I lived and you didn't. Other reports insisted that Old Three Legs attacked several children. One widely circulated story claimed the wolf confronted the 2 young children of Ole Yesterund while they were walking home from school one day. The family, Airedale, bravely stood in the way and sacrificed his life as the children ran to safety at the house. Little Timmy Elliott, the 9-year-old son of farmer Frank Elliott of Hubbard County, had a close call with Old Three Legs when the boy went to the spring to fetch water. The father heard the son screaming, grabbed a rifle, and ran towards the spring. The boy later told his father that as he was filling the bucket, he looked up and the wolf was standing only a few feet away. Thinking quickly, the boy lunged into the pool and slipped underwater. Every time he came up for a breath, the wolf snapped at his face. When the father showed up, the wolf disappeared. An old-timer named Julius Scouge was called in to try his hand at Old Three Legs. Widely known for his trapping abilities, Scouge faced months of frustration in which he found many of his steel traps sprung by his intended quarry with nothing to show. Finally, he teamed up with another well-known trapper, John Holton of Lammers, Minnesota, to try a different approach. Holton was famous for his expertise with snares. The 2 men set a snare after a snare after a snare, all to no avail. Both finally went home in utter defeat. Time passes. The ruthless killing continued, though age began to creep up on Old Three Legs. Reports began to circulate that whenever his tracks are found, 2 sets of smaller tracks always accompanied them. This led to much speculation, but the smaller tracks were eventually determined to be those of 2 coyotes that apparently had taken up with the lone killer. People now swore that Old Three Legs had purposely enlisted the help of those 2 able-bodied hunters to aid him in obtaining food. By the mid-1920s, the mid 1920s. Old Three Legs had become the most famous wolf in Minnesota history. Rumors abound that his strange behavior was caused by rabies or some other brain disorder. Many people believed that he was indeed a spirit wolf and was impervious to bullets and could disappear in the blink of an eye. Some insisted his ultimate demise could only come through a superhuman feat. Then, in November of 1926, 5 deer hunters were camped on the property of Jerry Welts on Big Medicine Lake in Becker County. As always, they hoped to pull in a supply of venison for the cold months ahead. 4 of the hunters, Harry Ledoux, Fred Darkow, Jack Robbins, and George McCarthy, lived in the Detroit Lakes area. The 5th, Herb MacArthur, hailed from Ogama. Their method of hunting typically consisted of several daily deer drives. On the morning of November 20th, the men divided up and left camp. Darkow and McCarthy were the designated drivers, while the other 3 men were to be the standers. No sooner had the 2 drivers gotten started than McCarthy spotted a lone wolf on a hillside about 200 yards away. He fired 2 quick shots, but the quick-witted animal faded into the brush unscathed. Startled by the reports, a nearby doe jumped up and ran. The wolf gave chase. Luck, serendipity, or something close akin to magic caused the doe to run right past Darkow. Known to be a skilled hunter and a crack shot, Darkow recently had moved to the Detroit Lakes region to try his hand in the fur business, raising mink. He was wielding a lever-action Winchester Model 55. The doe offered a good shot and a chance to collect some winter meat. Darkow made a perfect running shot and watched as she piled up in the snow. Then he caught the movement out of the corner of his eye. A wolf. Never taking the gun from his shoulder, he dropped Old Three Legs in his tracks with a well-placed shot to the neck. Fate finally had brought about the demise of one of the shrewdest killers in Minnesota history. Being a newcomer to the area, Darkow had not been fully aware of the wolf's widespread reputation. Even though he had killed a number of other wolves, Darkow must have been a little overwhelmed when he was treated like a returning war hero, having accomplished a feat that dozens of other hunters and trappers had been trying to achieve for nearly 9 years. He soon became the most famous hunter in Minnesota. He later collected at least one hefty reward offered by the state. The carcass of the legendary wolf was hung outside the McCarthy Hotel in downtown Detroit Lakes.
Damn.
Along with the buck and 3 does that Darkow's hunting party had downed. Local residents came from miles around to gawk at the most dreaded wolf in Minnesota history and congratulate its killer. Darkow estimated the wolf to be 7 feet long from nose to tail and its weight to be 75 to 80 pounds. By the time several local newspapers ran the story, however, the renegade's weight had swelled to a whopping 125 pounds.
I was going to say 70 to 80 doesn't sound like a lot.
Right? Old Three Legs was mounted by a Minneapolis taxidermist and put on display in the lobby of the McCarthy Hotel, where it attracted numerous onlookers. Several newspapers across Minnesota wrote stories about the killer's demise, and in 1931, Field and Stream did a feature on the rogue wolf. After interest in the mounted wolf subsided at the hotel, Darkow took it home and stored it in a barn on his property, where it remained largely forgotten for the next 50 years. The old marauder was eventually donated to the Becker County Museum in Detroit Lakes. After a half-century in obscurity, the fur and weathered mount had more than a few quote-unquote mouse chews. The museum had the mount restored and placed in a protective glass case. Darkow's classic Winchester used to kill Old Three Legs was eventually donated to the museum and put on display with the mount. Legends die hard in northern Minnesota. Some still say when the winter moon is just right and the pines crack in the frigid north wind, you might just happen to catch a glimpse of Old Three Legs running through the snow with that odd 3-legged gait. And if he's close enough, he'll turn and look at you with a cold, glassy stare that will make your skin crawl and then vanish into thin air right before your eyes. What?
So can you go see him now?
You can. He is currently on display at the Becker County Museum.
Okay.
I had intended on going there this weekend, but then I was like, the Lakes area is going to be too crazy.
But it was all 3 foot or whatever. He's 3 legs.
Oh, 3 legs.
Yeah, you could have seen him.
Well, I still can.
I guess there's photos of him online then.
Yeah.
Right there at this point.
Yeah. There's plenty of photos. There's even artwork that has been done about this thing.
Mm.
I love when a story captures the imagination of people, right? Who knows if it was this single wolf that did all of this?
Right.
I mean, there's some firsthand accounts to it.
Right.
And at one point, you'd be able to tell that there was a 3-legged animal because of tracks and stuff like that. But
Right. I mean, being able to draw its lineage to literally it when it was a cub because someone just happened to be outside the cave.
it's crazy, right?
Well, I mean, I think it's so crazy that it might strain credulity, but it is a great story.
But so one of the things I read was that wolves were worth $6 a piece, whether they were a pup or full grown. So it would make sense
okay.
that this guy would track this lone female wolf to her den because if she had pups, he could claim the bounty on,
Got it.
5 or 6.
Right.
And, 1916, $6 was a lot back then.
Yeah, I'm wondering what that equates to in today dollars.
I mean, you got the internet in front of you. We should find out.
But it's serving that thing. I don't want to touch it.
Oh, I see.
But
I
you've
see
got
what's
the internet
going
in front
on.
of you.
Yeah. Shall I look it up?
Yeah.
Okay. So what's your favorite part of Old Three Legs legend?
I think it was when the coyotes are enlisted.
Mm-hmm.
That sort of cross species collaboration. I think it's very heartwarming. And I was hoping the little feats were going to be like, oh, he found a female, had 2 baby wolves, and then killed the female, but he decided to keep the babies. Like, these are my sons. I'm going to raise them to be like me.
Mm-hmm. Or maybe he was like that farmer whose wife Amundsen had died, he had relations with a wolf many counties away, and she sent the wolf cubs here. By the way, $170 a piece.
Okay.
In today's standards.
I really like that. You think those kids, they show up in Minneapolis, and so why did you come out here? Oh, to escape a mad wolf.
See,
we had to get away from a murderous wolf.
Mom was killed when she saw the wolves, what the wolf had done, and Pa can't take care of us.
It's really the.
I mean, it's very Mad Men like.
I mean, it's very much Minnesota's answer to The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Yeah,
to
some extent, you would think so. Right,
kids get sent out to escape the bombing.
I think Minnesota has a lot of legend, right?
Oh,
because you think about like Paul Bunyan and Babe the Blue Ox.
Yeah.
They've got a lot of Bigfoot type stuff. I mean, I think that they enjoy legend a little bit.
Which is weird because isn't the North Dakota tourism phrase, or that used to be? It's no longer be legendary.
I don't even know.
What is it now?
It's come north Josh Duhamel.
North of normal? No.
That's Fargo's.
That's Fargo's.
Yeah. I think it's still be legendary.
Is it still be legendary?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Which, by the way, doesn't make any sense at all.
Right.
Because only one part of our state is really like cowboy-esque, and it's the farthest you're going to have to get.
So some real talk here. What do you think Burgum's actual calculation is? To me, it's one of two things.
Uh-huh.
Either it truly is, I think I can become president because I can peel off enough Democratic votes from Biden, and if I can somehow beat Republicans in the primary, I'll be the only option. That's his one.
Uh-huh.
The other is the book tour thing. This will raise my profile. This will get me into the cabinet somehow, or this will get me into some other
national attention.
This will just raise my profile a bit, but I'll continue to be the governor of North Dakota.
So here's some thoughts and some conversations I've had with people who actually are pretty savvy when it comes to politics, especially in our state. Number one, he is worthless because of the number of electoral votes that he could bring into the game, right?
Right.
But he's very, very liked by banks and by some really heavy hitters money-wise. I see a world where he goes to a primary and has a faithful enough amount of delegates who do think that he'd do a good job, whether they think, oh, look at this guy who's connected to Microsoft, so it's very tech-friendly. Look at the bigotry that he signed into law in North Dakota. He could do that for the rest of the country because that's really hot right now, is being a piece of shit. But because of those things, he might end up getting a chunk of delegates that would be worthy of being placed as the VP on a ticket.
God, I guess, yeah, that is the other one is he's gunning for the VP position.
Right. And I could see a real possibility where he runs for president, drops out of the race to become someone's VP.
Uh-huh.
So he brings money and delegates for a primary. But like I said, the problem is that he doesn't sway any electoral votes.
Sure.
And that's a huge thing. That's why, like, for like Obama, Illinois, great state, right? Because it's got
right.
so many electoral votes.
Right.
I don't know. When Doug Burgum announced his run for North Dakota governor, I was jazzed, and he got my vote right off the bat. I was so excited, and not because he was running under I'm a businessman, so I'll run the state like a business, but because you looked at all the cool stuff that he had been involved with and that he had done. He donated to causes I liked, like the FMCT. You know, he redid that entire front area for them. He did build a tech company out of nothing and then kept it headquartered in Fargo, North Dakota, when it would have been easy to move that thing to Minneapolis or another bigger city. He convinced Microsoft to put a huge stamp and to say Fargo, North Dakota is where we're going to build this giant campus. I thought he was going to take us from essentially what we were operating as like a 1970s state and bring us ahead of other states. I thought we were all going to have free internet, and they were going to fly some blimps or whatever, some dirigibles, and we were going to have like this weird blanket, like high-speed internet everywhere. I thought that this was the best thing for North Dakota because it's a North Dakota guy who was raised in Arthur, North Dakota, and he has done nothing but disappoint me. And I hate that. It drives me bonkers because I think that there's a lot of good stuff that he could be doing. And I don't know why he has to bow down to party politics unless you want to be, rise above your situation.
Right. So, I mean, yeah, it feels more like just more personal aggrandizement. Oh, that's an even shinier office to have is the president versus the governor. It just comes off to me that way.
It does. But it feels wrong.
But at the same time, I look at the whole plethora of candidates right now. I don't see a single one that makes me get excited to vote
on either side of the ticket.
Either side, I'll vote. I always do. But yeah, I mean, there isn't a single one that makes me go. And I'm not attempting to draw an quote unquote enlightened centrist position because I don't believe in that. I just literally, it's more like, yeah, one of them will get my vote, but none of them is making me go, yes, like that's right. Our person.
Like, do you remember when Obama ran that first campaign and he got us to believe in hope?
Right.
Like, nobody's getting me excited about the future right now.
Right.
All it has is I am scared for the future. It's like, who's going to? I imagine you watch the show Succession. Mm-mm. I know nothing about Succession. Right.
I know it's like a play on Fox News.
The idea is that Brian Cox is going to leave, and he's the owner of this company. And which of his kids or other people is he going to give it to? Right.
Yep.
So the series is about who's the lesser of all the evils, and I kind of feel like that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, tale as old as time,
right?
I guess when it comes to politicians,
and it's at a time when people want to be inspired. Also, by the way, I don't know why anyone would want to be the president of the United States right now.
Power,
because,
yeah.
But is it really power?
It's not the power that we would like to have as a king, but for sure there's power there. Absolutely.
Sure, but you still at the same time are completely handcuffed by what you can do and what you can't, because there's enough people who say, just because I don't support your party, I'm going to make sure that you don't have to do this. Do you remember the days when people campaigned for 7 months?
Yep.
To get your vote? Now, the second you're elected in office, you have to start campaigning again.
Yep.
Those first 100 days are about what should the yard signs look like for the next campaign.
Yeah, I suspect as we're looking at two different kinds of power. We're the people are looking at the getting things done for us. There's a different kind of power that's sort of behind the scenes there. That I think that's the real prize.
Yeah.
That's where the things are at. And a lot of shaping does happen historically. I mean, look at Trump. He put 3 justices on the Supreme Court, right? So I mean, there's certainly it's not like a king where you can just go and make anything happen that you want, and that's good. It shouldn't be like that. But I think there's a little bit more underneath that. There's a Game of Thrones going on there.
But
that none
okay,
of us
let
are
me
a part
let me
of.
put it this way: there's no winning
For us.
No. I think for the president, right? There's no winning because no matter what. Right now, we have such a you can't do that to me attitude in this country that even if you serve for 4 years and you got stuff accomplished, people are still going to look for skeletons in your closet. They're still going to try and do anything they can to take you down. You're still going to end up being charged with crimes that seem ridiculous. Like, oh, you stole pictures of me in my underwear and now I'm going to sue you in New Jersey. And so you have to send someone to go represent yourself. I would hate to be a modern day president because there's not a single day that you get to wake up and everything feels good. Even when you do something like the annual White House Easter egg roll, people come at you and be like, you're only using white eggs in this Christian ceremony.
Right.
You're like, come on, man.
Right.
I just want to do just one thing.
Yeah.
And maybe that's been the way it's been like for a long time, but we certainly feel like our voice needs to be heard by the president individually now. You know, people with their podcasts and blogs and things as such think you deserve to hear what my opinion is on it, and you should act in the way I want. And if I don't, I'm going to use my power to try and get more people against you so you can't have any of yours. It's ridiculous. And the amount of deals that have to go into, like, so when you look at, the state of North Dakota just had a recent legislative session, right? The amount of crap that went through that session is mind-boggling to me. The idea that we won't fund school lunches, but the people we elected are going to get more per diem for their lunch.
Yep.
Do they not understand who they're supposed to be serving here? And also, nobody made you run for that position. Right. So if you're saying, gosh, every year or every 2 years, I've got to live for like 5 months in Bismarck and I got to rent a hotel room or an apartment and then I got to eat every day and I can't pack my own sandwich. I'm from Bowman. And that is the thing that drives me up the wall is nobody forced you to serve. It's not like back in the day when people, you know, like, what was it? I'm trying to think of what. There was a city at one point who every year they would draw 4 citizens' names out of like a hat. And those would be the people who'd sit on the city commission. It wasn't an election. It was just like, it's your turn to, work for the city or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's not what's happening right now. And you want it what? So that, and like the agendas that people push and then think this is what my constituents want. This is what the people in my district want. And you're in that district. You go, that's not what I want. I don't want to push issues about people's bodies. I was in the state cap or our nation's capital during a Proud Boys rally. And you'd like to think that it's a small minority of people, right? That like, there's not a lot of people. It just seems like it is because it's constantly being reported on. There were tons of people who thought they were better than other people because of the color of their skin, because of where they were economically, because of who they were born to be. And it makes me sick to my stomach. It's funny because the same things that they could say about like a homosexual, I can say about them, which is you make me sick to my stomach and I wish you weren't in this country, Proud Boys. And if we get hate mail for that, good news. You can stop listening right now. If you identify as a Proud Boy, please don't listen to this podcast. We are so completely different that I can't imagine we'd be on any side. That being said, Sean Myrie and I came up with a genius idea last night, which is, so like imagine a newsletter for like the United States like Nazi Party. And so they've got, there's sections that are like, hey, a letter from, our leader this week and stuff. But to fill out the newsletter, they also have a movie review section. And they review it as whether or not they think that you'll enjoy it. So like The Little Mermaid, too woke for me, even under the sea. And I was like, could you imagine what they would write in that? Or like be like, hey, you know what I really loved? The musical Chicago. It had everything. just like the bizarre thing, and then maybe there's a wanted section in the back. By the way, I noticed you listed a bunch of VHS tapes for sale. You got some good stuff in there.
Yeah, those are just extras though. Those are ones I do not want. And boy, the spams have I been getting.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's the thing is you put it on Facebook Marketplace, you put it on Craigslist. You know what? It's not Craigslist. It's Facebook Marketplace. And you can kind of tell almost right off the bat because they'll say things like, hey, can I contact you via text? And I always say I only message here because I only need to. You contacted me this way. It was zero reason for us to, via Facebook Messenger. Because what they then want you to do is they try to use it as a method to try to get you to give them access to like one of your accounts and stuff like that. And so,
do you get ones where like, I can only pay $1,000. So if I give you 1,000, will you give me the money back from or they say the name of the whole listing?
Yeah. Or or their profile is just like a profile cutout, it's not an actual profile. It was created an hour ago kind of a thing. So, but I mean, I've sold, large lots of these on Facebook Marketplace before. So there's enough collectors in town that'll probably buy it up.
Let me tell you about selling some tickets I had to sell recently. So I bought 8 tickets to Willie Nelson's second show in Moorhead, Minnesota. First show sells out in under 5 minutes. They announced there's going to be a second show. Got online right away. Got 8 tickets in the reserve section. Very excited. Then 2 April blizzards take place. And because of the blizzards, responsibilities I had at Fargo North had to be rescheduled. And they picked Monday the 22nd and Tuesday the 23rd. So I no longer am able to go to the Willie Nelson concerts. So my first stop was like, I'm going to offer these to my boss if the station wants to buy them. And then we could host some like last chance giveaway parties and stuff like that. And I think because a lot of times, people, those are hot tickets to get in town.
Yeah.
People wanted them really bad.
And this is the last time he's going to be here.
Bingo.
Let's put it that way.
100% it is. And
dude's playing in a chair.
We do what we call last chance ticket stops. And so a place like Bernie's or a bar will buy this, like the Wild Rice Bar. And so you'll buy a last chance ticket stop, which means that for 2 hours, we'll broadcast live from your business. You can have a drink special if you want. But at the end of the 2 hours, we will give away these 2 tickets to people who are there and registered, right? And so I thought, God, if you were to give away 4 tickets to that night's Willie Nelson concert, that'd be worth like $5,000 that bar because you would pack that place for people to get their chance to win 4 tickets. So he says, yeah, I'll take 4. And so I sold them at cost. I didn't make any money at all. I sold it for the ticket price and the fees I paid on top of them, which, by the way, ticket fees, BS.
Yeah.
Total BS. They found out he bought them because his brother wanted to go. So we weren't going to use them for work.
Okay.
I was like, okay. Whatever. So then I load up the other 4 tickets. And I kind of waited because I was hoping that they would cancel one of these things, and they didn't. And so I thought, well, I'm going to sell them. So I go on StubHub and I find out that my 4 tickets that are $650, let's say for the 4 altogether with fees, are going for like $3,200. So I think I'm going to make some sweet cash, but I'm not going to like extort people. I'll charge $200 a ticket, meaning that I made $30 a ticket on these things, right? Put all the information in StubHub, start an account, whole thing like that. And then StubHub comes back and they're like, oh, sorry. It's too close to the concert date. You couldn't possibly mail them to somebody. And I was like, well, it's Thursday. And if someone locally bought them and I popped them in the mail on Friday, they'd have it by Saturday, at the very late, it takes 1 day to get mail from point A to point B in Fargo Moorhead. But then I was thinking like, okay, so if you were in Minneapolis, it probably would take longer, but you'd still get them probably by Tuesday. Anyway. So then I said, I'll go on Facebook Marketplace and I'll sell these tickets. They do not let you sell tickets on Facebook Marketplace. I'm not going to sell them on Craigslist because nobody trusts Craigslist, right? Like that's the thing.
I
is
do.
Like, but
tickets,
are you gonna believe them for $650? Where it's like you got to pay $650 to get tickets.
Not for
no
tickets.
one, right?
Not for tickets. No.
So I go, okay, fuck. What am I going to do? So I post on Facebook that I'm selling 4 tickets, right? Boom, 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 boom. I start getting messages immediately. And I get people who said, like, I only want 1. And I tell them it's a pair. It's this much for a pair. And I charged more for a pair, knowing I might get stuck with another pair, like I might not sell 4. So it's $200 a piece if you bought, I lowered it. It was $175 a piece if you bought all 4, $200 a piece if you just bought 2. Okay. And so then they'd get the price and then I'd ghost, they wouldn't get back to me. And I was like, and
Which is going to be like 98%
bingo.
of those kind of.
And so then I started getting calls from people and text messages like, hey, you don't know me, but so-and-so told me and gave me your number because they said you're selling Willie Nelson tickets. And so I had to respond to each one of those calls and texts and be like, yep, I am, it's this much. I need to be, if you want them, you need to claim them right now because I'm not going to hold them. It's first come, first serve. I accept Venmo. I accept cash. And I can do PayPal if you would prefer that. Ghost.
Yep.
Then I get the guy who sends me a message and he goes, I'd like to buy all 4. And I'm like, great, $175 a piece. He's like, I was thinking $70 a piece. And I said, well, I'm losing money on that. And he goes, okay, guy. Like, okay. And so then the next day he goes, $70 sounds pretty good right now, doesn't it?
Oh, I've had guys like that before too.
And so I said,
I just freeze them out. I just don't even listen to them.
I was like, nope, I'm still selling them for this price. And he goes, well, if you want to move those the day of the show. And I sent back this message. I would rather give these away for free to somebody than get screwed over by you. Mm-hmm. And in fact, I'm going to block you so that you will see this and you'll have no way to tell me how stupid I am.
He calls into the radio station.
Right? So, and then I get people who like send me a Facebook message and I message back within 2 minutes. And then they tell me like, hey, you never got back to me. I'm like, yeah, I did. It's right here. Oh, I didn't see that. I took a nap.
Yeah.
Be like,
yeah,
I don't get what the deal is.
Yeah. So I definitely have an auto end the conversation policy if I'm getting lectured about, my position that I'm in right now, and I should be glad to take their money. It's like, this is not a multi-million-dollar deal. This is a couple bucks for a thing.
Right.
And I'll just keep it in my garage. Thanks, man. I don't really want to meet you in person because you seem like a piece of shit.
Right, exactly. Like right? That's the thing, right? Is like at one point ticket reselling is the thing I hate the most. I used to get paid in like tickets from certain events. Like that would be my bonus. Mm. And so like when I worked at the Western Entertainment Festival, they'd be like, here, we pay you this much in your paycheck, but then we're going to give you this perk package with all these tickets. And most people who got a perk package traded their tickets for other things. Like I knew a guy who traded it for dental service. Mm-hmm. So like, here's 4 box seats and I never have to pay for dental services. Like you'll always, whatever it is comes up in the air, you're going to cover it at your own personal practice. I hate that. I hate selling tickets.
Yeah.
It makes me feel scummy and you can never trust anyone. And they do the same thing that your dad does, which is now the guy wants 50, but I'm going to show up with 30 and I got the other 20 with me, but I'm going to keep it in my car.
Yeah.
I'm going to pull out my wallet and be like, oh, I only got $30. You want it or not? And he goes, most of the time they'll just take it. Right. Cause like they just want to get rid of it. Just be done with it. Like, or you saw that the price they wanted was $50 and you've driven all the way to, Little Pine Lake. So just pay them the $50 that they asked for. Mm-hmm. If you wanted to negotiate, do that before you get there, unless it's something that you need to see and it's in worse condition than they made it seem to. Like at that point you walk away and it's sort of the buyer beware. This just happens with it. But God, it just drives me nuts. Like I could never have a garage sale. I could never have a garage sale where people come up to me and they're like, yeah, this thing says it's $5, but what about a quarter?
Right.
And I'll just be like, get off my property.
Yeah, I mean, whenever I list something, I always assume I'm going to be getting that. So if I think that's coming in, I'll try to list for just a bit higher. That if I know what I want to get for it, and that's basically it, then I'll do what I need to get to that point. But because the stakes are so low, because it's not like I need to move this product so that I can pay for my child's, cancer therapy treatments or something like that, then it's like, the stakes are too low. I'm pretty chill, I'm not against, making a discount just to move some stuff. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to put too much work into the hustle that he wants to put into, or a lot of people put into. Now, I respect it in some respects because you don't want to make a sucker's bet. You don't want to pay too much for something you shouldn't have to. But when it comes to the whole, I left a $20 bill in my car. Okay, so what happens if they say, no, I'm not going to sell it to you that? And then you have to walk away and get the 20. And then, you had it the whole time, I guess. Right? Yeah. I think if anything, that game is more like, this makes me feel really good in the moment. It feels good to get a deal for sure. But the margin that I look for in a deal is more about what just gets this whole procedure over with so we can move on. That's the thing that I kind of value a little bit more depending on what it is. Now, obviously I don't want to lose my ass on something, but if it's if I make this deal now and then it's just done and then I can fucking move on with my life. That's why I could never run a storefront. I would not want to have to constantly be in that mode of, I'm listing something for something, but you want to give me something else for it, and I got to deal.
How many
with
people
that.
do you think come into a store and negotiate though? I'm sure that
stores no.
I'm sure that there is some.
Right, garage sales, yes.
Yeah. Oh God.
Right, but because because you're dealing with the owner right there, right? That's the thing, is you're dealing with the owner right there, and because it's also not the way they make their living, so you can kind of go, oh well, this is outside of all of that. But if it was no, I literally run this garage sale every day and that's how I make my living.
Have you ever been to a live auction, like an estate auction?
Yeah, where they're
Where they do the whole can I get 5? Can I get 5? Can I get 5? 510, 510, 510. Who got 510, 520? We're going to 520, 520.
Yep.
Come on.
Yeah.
Do you know that there's a school for that?
Oh yeah,
There's an auctioneer
There's
school.
competitions for it.
Yeah,
it's
there
pretty
is.
fantastic.
Which, can you imagine dating an auctioneer? Be like, pick you up at 5, pick you up at 5, 530, 530, going once, going twice. Oh,
There's
530.
really great videos of people doing auctioneering calls and then putting electronic
beat.
music underneath it, because they are on sort of a rhythm.
So
if I had to deal,
first-
I would. That's the thing that I'm glad I don't have to deal with though. When I'm bidding on things online, I like bidding online, and I don't like crouching and hoping to get the good deal and I'm going to bid right at the very end. I just kind of go, yeah, I think it'd be great to get it at this price, so I'll bid that. I probably won't get it, and then hey, surprise, I got it, or I didn't.
So
Oops.
I went to my first ever live auction when I was in my mid-20s, and I was astounded at it because when you're having an estate auction, everything must go. And there's things that attract people to it. So for example, you could have a set, a hutch, right? Like an antique hutch that if you were to sell that in an antique store in New York City, you could probably get $1,000, but they started at 5 and you're lucky if you get 50 out of it. Right. Because we're not putting it back into the house.
Right.
It's come out of the house. It's on the lawn. You're going to take it.
Right.
And so you put things like oil lanterns, I guess, are really popular for people who are going to auctions.
Interesting. I guess they're antiques and they're not making new ones.
Right. Maybe there's some whale blubber in the bottom that you can have. So one of the things that intrigue me the most is if there are things that people don't bid on, they go into a pile. And at the end of the auction, they auction off the unauctionable. And the pile itself now goes for 25 cents, but they get something out of this. And so a lot of times they'll bulk things together. So let's say it's an estate auction. You're not going to auction off a single hose, but it's 4 hoses, each 100 feet in length, and then a garden rake and a hoe and this tin sign that says "Rest your butt here," right? And so they start the auction at $5. No one bids. They start at $1. They go all right, we'll lower this $1. Who will give me $1? $1. And no one bids on it. Goes into the pile. So that happens throughout this whole auction, and this pile becomes enormous. And then someone buys it for 25 cents, right? And so I've told people who are buying a new house, you just need to go out to an estate auction, because starting a house, you might think, oh, I'll take all the stuff I have from my apartment and, there you go, I'll fill the whole house. But that's not always the case because now all of a sudden you need to like have a hose, right? Now you could go buy a brand new hose and it's going to cost you $25. Or you can spend 25 cents because it's a perfectly good hose and it's not like you're using it for any, like sexual purposes.
Yes.
Or maybe you are.
Yes.
Maybe that's your thing.
Very early in the marriage.
But I am always intrigued by auctions and what they've got. And sometimes they have no idea what they have when you go out there.
Well, do you ever use KBid?
Yeah, I have a couple times.
Okay, because that's like where I got this desk where I need to locate the screws for still. But with the screws, I mean, that's a $2,500 desk.
Yeah.
And I got it for $125.
125 in the scariest drive of your life.
Yeah, very scary drive. But I'm glad I got it. I got 2 of them.
Oh my God, Tucker.
I have a whole garage filled with shit that I got to fucking sell.
Old 3 legs. Maybe that's the wolf that I hit when I was driving you to Minneapolis that one time.
The coyote?
No,
the coyote that you hit?
It was old 3 legs.
It was not only was it a coyote,
of old 3 legs.
Not only was it a coyote, it had 4 legs.
How do we know?
Because I saw it before.
You saw it, you counted all 4 legs?
Yes, I did. I said, "Oh, look at that coyote and his 4 legs." JJ, what are you doing? Driving right through him like an animal. And now he's evaporated.
First of all, that is not how it went. That thing came out of nowhere because I was driving to Minneapolis in a blizzard.
He fucking sublimated into the atmosphere after
he rolled across the top and he landed on his feet and he walked away because you can't kill a spirit animal. But it'll roll across the top of your car and it'll mess up your plastic bumper.
I remember him exploding, basically. That was like my memory.
When I hit a turkey, the turkey exploded. And I was pulling feathers out of the bottom of that car for years after that.
I had a moment just the other day driving to Bismarck where a bird just didn't catch the right tailwind or whatever, leaving underneath this bridge or whatever. And fucking took my windshield. And the windshield was fine. The bird was not. And I remember seeing, like, looking behind me and him doing this, like, little loop in the air before falling to the ground. I felt so bad. I felt it was such a beautiful little bird.
I've hit maybe 5 animals in my life, and none of them have ever, like, been horrible accidents. Like, knock on wood, I've never hit a deer. But, like, I've seen cars that have like hit a deer and it's just can be horrific.
We ran over a deer once.
A bear is another one too, where I've seen people hit a bear.
That would be scary.
Yeah,
that'd be really
horrible,
scary,
right?
We were driving years ago in Minnesota somewhere at night, and Solomon was just a little baby, and his dad and him, Tony, were in the back seat, and I was in the front seat, and Mom was driving, and Tony goes, "Deer," and we think he's talking to Mom, and then she's like, "What?" And he goes, "No, deer." And we realized that there's a deer trying to cross the road right in front of us that we didn't see. And it tries to go back. It sees us and freaks out and tries to go back, but it slips on the road and kind of falls down and we run over it basically. And then we kept going. And because it was like snowing out and it was dangerous out and we have a baby in the car with us and stuff. But that was pretty traumatic.
It's pretty weird because like the deer was wearing a cap and reflective clothing. And
also, it only had...
And it said, ouch.
It had 3 legs, too. That was weird.
I was in a bus chaperoning a drama trip for a bunch of high school students. And we were coming back. And it was mid-March, I think, when we were coming back. And I was seated not in the front of the bus, like the front row, but I was like 4 rows back. And
yeah, the chaperone's usually towards the front.
Right, yeah.
So you gotta let the kids have the back.
Kids in the back could, be kissing.
You don't want to see what's going on back there.
It smells bad. But the other chaperone who's in front of me had put his seat all the way back, so his head was pretty much in my lap.
Oh, fuck that guy.
So I'm like, I can't sleep during this. And so I'm watching, and our driver was a really good driver, and you can tell because a deer ran into the road, and he didn't like slam on the brakes or anything like that. He just kept on the gas.
The bus is going to win.
So he hits this thing and it's red mist, right? Like this thing turns into particles. He hits it so hard and you feel like a thump underneath. And there's a couple kids up front who are like, oh my God, it's dead. And they start crying. And I think I was gonna tell the bus driver, like, listen, come to my house first, and I'll hose off the front of the bus before we let kids out, because I bet it's gonna be just disgusting, right? Like,
Fuck it, let them see it.
Maybe the head's still sticking out of
Let
it.
them see it.
We get out of the bus at the school. There's nothing.
Sure. Yeah.
Nothing. No blood. Nothing. And I remember thinking, like, I don't understand how that's possible.
Yeah.
I honestly don't understand how there's not a dent in the bus or anything like that. Like, that is dumbfounding to
So were you
me.
guys on the interstate then at
Yeah.
that point? Yeah. So going so fast and just like.
One of the worst things that I've ever seen was like a semi who had hit a big buck, and its antlers got caught. Like, so the head essentially like keeps it like stuck underneath the front. And so we pulled into like the Clearwater rest stop, and he's there and he's hosing it off. And like, there's like a bus, like an elementary school bus that goes by, and all the kids are pressing their faces. And I'm like, dude, you need to find like a personal space for this. Like, you shouldn't be
Totally.
doing this in front of the kids. Also, have you ever heard this story about Andre the Giant? Not to get too far off the beaten path, but how Andre the Giant had to like use the bathroom on a flight, but he wasn't big enough, or like he's too big to get in the bathroom, so they had to hold up a sheet
Well, he would use the bathtub in hotels.
to poop.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a story from I was like a wrestling interview I saw once with someone who knew him really well, and he would just shit in tubs and then run the water because the toilet he couldn't fit in the bathrooms. By the way, I invented a really fun game yesterday
Oh yeah.
that you can play with other people. I haven't played with other people yet, but you can play it by yourself,
Okay.
which is the best kind of game. And you have to play it when you're driving. That's the best time to play it that I've found. Okay. And the game is called What Are You Doing Right Now? Okay. And what you do to play What Are You Doing Right Now is, as you're driving, if you just see someone, you pick a random stranger, and then you have to say out loud what they might answer. If a friend of theirs calls them right at that moment, says, "Hey, what are you doing right now?" And you have to answer in a silly voice.
Okay.
And so you just be like driving down the road, you see a guy like, "Oh, me right? Oh, nothing. I'm standing right next to my favorite speed limit sign," and that's it. And then you just do that over and over again. The first like 4 or 5, they won't come off as funny. Okay. Once you get to like 8 or 9, now you're having a good time. Now you're really entertaining yourself. So if you're ever on a long car ride and you see other people in their cars, like, just talk for them as though it's a good game. It's called What Are You Doing Right Now?
I'm so sorry how lonely you are. I didn't know it had gotten this far.
Hey, you have
I'll make more of an effort.
You have not played Hey, What Are You Doing Right Now yet?
Yeah, I haven't.
So don't knock it till you try it.
True.
It's a really good game.
I also have never filled my hand with hot peppers,
You know what?
and then
Next time you
touch my genitals.
Next time you and I go on a road trip, we're gonna play.
Okay.
We're gonna play, and it's gonna be fun. You're gonna have a good time.
I mean, I have already done a similar game like this, but it's to entertain children in the car. So, be like, "Oh, look at that guy. What's that guy doing?" And it's like, "I'm heading down to Sesame Street."
That's great. That's awesome. That is such a great answer.
Yeah. Children get pretty tired of it pretty fast.
I mean, they're just
this isn't original.
I don't think you've done it long enough with them. Remember the first 4 or 5, you got to really muscle through.
Sure. We're going to
It's like watching the first season of any show.
I
right?
know that the McDonald's is hot, but we're going to drive around until you find this amusing and I get the laughter I deserve.
No, you can't have any fries
All
right now.
Benjamin. Jill eats the fries right out of the bag on the way home, and it drives me nuts.
I know we've had this conversation before.
I just want to make sure people understand, because just like in radio, we have to assume there's people who are listening to this who've never listened to another episode before. Maybe they are in a car driving with a frequent listener of JJ Meets World who is forcing them to play Tucker's sad little game. And they're like, "Listen, I know there's not a lot of people walking around Dilworth at 3:30 in the morning, but we'll just listen to this podcast until we get there." And they're like, "Who's Jill?"
By the way,
like, "Well, Jill is my spirit animal."
Old Jill 3 legs.
Sounds like she's got a wiener. That's going to wrap it up for today's show. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to help us continue to produce new episodes each week, visit jjmeetsworld.com, where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some swag at the merch shop, or follow our link to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. You can also follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all the sites the cool kids are using these days. JJ Meets World is produced every week by Tucker Lucas. You can find out more about Tucker's work by visiting moonbasemaria.com. If you want to get in touch with your host with the most, check out linebenders.com, where you can find direct contact info for JJ or booking information. I'm sorry I was so mean about your game. Parker Brothers would probably buy that up in a second. Get little pieces. Something that goes in a car. I'm sorry.